Welcome to Rethink Travel podcast. I'm Natalie, your host, and this show is for conscious travelers, powered by Rethink Travel, a platform that aims to educate on sustainability and create a community of conscious travelers around the world. You will listen to conversations I had with hoteliers and people dedicated to make tourism better. So if you seek more from your travels than just a nice place to stay, let's get to the next story. Phinias, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to do a very quick introduction myself because I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. To me, you're an entrepreneur who cares so much about rural communities. But when I look at your Instagram every day, it's so inspiring. You know so much about so many topics that I don't feel like I will do justice to introduce you. So can you please tell us about who you are, a little bit introduction about yourself, and how you came to doing what you do today?
All right. Thank you very much, Natalie. So my name is Phinias Mushayi. I'm a Zimbabwean entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur since leaving high school. I've done a lot of business. Maybe as we focus on tourism, I'm somebody who has always been a passionate traveler. In that traveling, so I've been to pretty much many holiday destinations in Africa, outside Africa, and everything. So one of the things about me is that I always love to get in touch with the local communities that whenever I travel, for example, when I traveled to China, I enjoyed the hutongs more than anything else, right? Because that's where it allows you to connect with the people, right? So it's the same as here in Africa. So whenever I travel, I always fall in love with local communities. So I eventually decided to be more involved with communities that are in rural areas, that are tourist destinations. Because here in Africa, most of our resorts are linked to rural areas, right? So, but one of the things that we realized was that the rural areas, in as much as they are the owners of the land where most of our tourism actually happen, they do not really benefit much, right? So you realize that here in Africa, most of the lodges that are within tribal lands, if I might call that. So within those tribal lands, it means that if a hotel or a lodge takes away 10 square kilometers, right? Those 10 square kilometers, it's either they're being taken away from a local community or they're being taken away from a sort of land where it's reserved for the animals, right? So I really got passionate about tourism and said, you know what, I would love to invest in tourism. How do I then invest in a way that would also benefit the local communities? That's when we then realized, you know what, it's not really about coming and building a lodge. There are so many other ways you can deal with rural communities that would also empower them, right? So like those rural communities, they do a lot. They do a lot of things like they do crafts, right? They own a lot of land that has got herbal plants, right? They own a lot of animals. They've got a touch, a connection with the land, right? But we then realized that when people are actually coming to Africa for their travel, they usually relate their experience to the lodge that they stayed at, right? That I stayed at a 5-star hotel or a 7-star lodge where every minute I had someone who was bringing me water, I had the most amazing champagne and everything, right? But at the end of the day, people really don't then experience the real Africa, because the real Africa is the warmth that you get when you interact with the local communities, right? So a lot of these lodges, they don't really allow you to have a moment where you then interact with the local communities on a social basis. Most of them, most of the times you actually visit them, they'll actually tell you, no, these are poor communities, you can donate, you can leave a donation or something like that, right? But you know, those rural folk, it's not like they expect you to leave them with some money or some donation when you go to their countries. No, some of them, they just want an opportunity to just connect with you. So you'd realize that, for example, you can come to a local community and then you get to speak to an amazing young man that has got knowledge in computers, right? That you might actually then end up connecting with, and then eventually you might actually be able to sort of get into business together. Just you get into a local community, then you meet a herbalist within that community, and you realize, no, they've got this amazing herb that can do wonders with the skin and everything, right? From there, you realize that it will start to help the local communities as well, because that very same resource where the animals are kept was for the animals for you to be able to see the animals within a national park. It means that somebody has to look after that land, like not cut the trees, not poison the rivers and everything, right? So it's those local communities that actually keep those resources. But at the end of the day, also, like, it will be good for them to also get rewards from being the custodians of that environment, right? So many times when visitors actually come to visit tourist facilities, you realize that they never really get an opportunity to really connect with the local communities, right? So that's where my passion, that's where my drive is. So my drive is not to really come and say I'm going to build a 7-star lodge. No, what I want to do is to sort of create an environment where even if you're staying at your lodge, you actually have an opportunity to have a real connection between you and the local communities, right? And I think that behavioral change has to start with the owners of the lodges, right? Because so many times they're trying to stop you from getting a real connection with those local communities, right? Because so many times you need to ask yourself that these lodges, if you then look at their financial reports, right, you realize that they make maybe profits of 10 million, 15 million, 20 million US dollars per year, right? But just outside their gates, there are so many local communities that are so poor, right, that cannot afford to pay school fees for their children. They cannot afford new shoes. And then what do? They tell you, the tourists, and say, you know what? You can also help these communities by donating to them. But look at how much they're actually charging you for you to stay at that facility, and look at how much they're actually making. So if those people really change their way of doing things and say, you know what, we actually need to start to empower those communities that are around us, so that of all those profits that we make, if we spend just maybe a fraction, like 10% of their profits, if they spend them in doing business with local communities, I'm not saying they should donate, no, I'm saying in doing business with the local communities, right? It would go a long way. Rather than having a scenario where they are now saying, no, you're a tourist, you come here, and the people are looking for money to pay school fees and everything, right? But I don't feel it's the right thing for them to then expect the tourists to be the one that will be doing that, because you spend maybe 3,000, 4,000 US dollars for you to stay maybe for a week at a certain facility, but that facility then still expects you to then be the one that is then responsible for also looking after the local communities. We don't need to turn those local communities into beggars. We actually need to turn them into people that we also incorporate in our businesses, right? So for example, I'll give you a simple example, right? When you come to your lodge, right, you eat chicken, you eat eggs. So when you eat those things, usually here in Zimbabwe, they come maybe 500 kilometers away or 1,000 kilometers away. They are being supplied by these big companies and everything, right? But it would have been simpler for that hotel if they had gone to the local community and start a business.
A supply chain with the...
Yes. They make the local community become a part of the supply chain, right? They could actually build the facilities, build the chicken pens, right? Then they'll come back and say, you know what? No, these people are not able to run businesses on them by themselves. Then I say, okay, no, that's fine. That we can solve it, right? You simply run the business together, right? The community then provides the labor and the land, and then you provide the business side of things. Because, you know, you can never go wrong when the community is just coming to provide land and coming to provide labor. Those are things that are not very difficult to control. What might be difficult to control is the business side of things, because maybe they might need to make some business decisions. There is always a way you can actually partner with those local communities, right? But for them, they would rather do the easier route, whereby they would rather procure from a very long distance, right? But one thing that they actually forget is that those local communities, they are the custodians of that land. So when you build, for example, if I'm to come into your hometown and then you own acres of land in that hometown as a community, then if I build my lodge within that space, yes, it might be a private lodge, but I'm building within a community. You realize that those trees that are there, they are there because the community respects the environment, right? So you'd realize that you then owe everybody that is around you something, right? So that's my passion. That's what I'm actually pushing. So whenever I'm speaking to rural communities, we're trying to, like right now, one of the things that we're trying to do is to push a concept of more like rural Airbnbs, right? Whereby we then deal with these rural communities and help them build facilities that could allow you to be comfortable. Maybe a facility that has got a solar, that have got clean water, right? So that you could actually stay within a homestead, but you can also have the comforts that you'd expect when you actually travel, so that the tourist also would be able to live in a comfortable way. But then it allows you to really have a genuine connection with the local communities, right? I'm not saying like when you come for your 2 weeks vacation, you're going to stay with them for those 2 weeks, but just one night, right? And then you spend $100 on that night, right? You sleep there. The local community, they will respect you a lot, right? Because you have come and you have helped them within their local communities in making income without making a donation. That could also be a strategy that could also be used by those luxury lodges that, you know what, you're our guest. So for your 14 days, we're going to give you 2 days where you're going to stay within the local communities in an Airbnb. You'll be hosted by the locals, right? And then they will provide you with whatever you need for you to be comfortable. That would actually go a very, very long way. Then eventually especially with the youth travelers, I feel like the youth are more adventurous, they are more into exploring and everything. You'd realize that they would then start to have even longer stays.
Yes, and also the young people care a lot more about the SDGs and about sustainability than the older generation, although we're trying so hard to educate. And
yeah.
I think this is also something I really like about what you do, is how much time you put into educating people around you. You're a member of Ecotourism Africa.
Ecotourism Africa.
What exactly is that, and how many countries are part of it? Can you just tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So with this Ecotourism Africa, it's a movement that I started with a couple of friends, whereby we're then saying like we need to have tourism that is more conscious about the environment and the local communities, right? So we do a couple of initiatives that help local communities. So one of the things that we've done, so right now, we started it in 2020. That was just before COVID hit. Right. So unfortunately, when we were about to have a bit of traction, then COVID hit, right? But that did not bar us from implementing a couple of projects. So one of the things that we did with communities in the rural Victoria Falls, that we right now we're in the middle of building a village within a chief's homestead. So that village, we wanted to be able to host tourists. So, for example, when you then visit Victoria Falls, you'll be able to one of the nights you'll be able to sleep at the chief's compound, because chiefs here, they are very powerful. They are custodians of our culture and everything. So when you sleep at the chief's homestead, you'll be able to experience the culture of the people and just to sort of understand more about local cultures and everything. So we're in the middle of building that. Then also one of the initiatives that we've done is that we have started working with rural women, empowering them with resources to be able to expand their chicken projects, right? So these people, they already know, right? They already have the knowledge and the understanding of doing these businesses. What they just needed was maybe a bit of capital and a bit of help on their business concepts and everything. So that's one of the things that we're also doing, helping those local women to start those projects. Then one of the things that we're doing is then now we are linking them with the markets, because Victoria Falls, it's a city of many lodges and many hotels, right? So what we're doing is that we are then encouraging these hotels that, you know what, you might as well consider buying from these local women. They will match the price of the other suppliers, and then we'll also make sure that the logistics are in order, so that whenever the their products are ready, we then make sure that we help them to bring them to the market when they are freshest and everything. So those are some of the initiatives that we're doing, and we have started here in Zimbabwe. Then we want to push it into Zambia. Then from there, we've already made inroads in Mozambique as well. Until eventually we will push it throughout Africa. And the way that we want to do it is, it's not like we want to duplicate it in different countries. No, we just want to sell the concept to people in other different countries so that they can also take up a concept like that and refine it in a way that suits their local terrain, right? So the whole idea, our end game in this is that we want to have a movement that makes sure that communities within touristic areas are also part of the tourism business by becoming active in the supply chains, right? We feel they're always told, no, the women, they make crafts, they make these amazing handbags or these handwares and everything. Yes, of course, yes, that I understand. Yes, it's fine for you to buy from them, but their potential is beyond that, right? Those women, they are the ones that have been working the land for centuries. And there's amazing food that you can get from them. They do the most amazing chicken. They know how to rear rabbits. They know how to do goats. If you're a vegetarian or if you're vegan, they know the best plants that you can actually, yes. So like, yes, they know the most amazing and most delicious plants, right, that you could actually eat from them. But how pity is it that you come to Zimbabwe, then you come to a lodge, then every day you're eating broccoli, carrots, and cauliflower, and all these Western vegetables. And then you meet on an opportunity of eating an amazing vegetable that is only found here in Zimbabwe, right? That you could have loved and said, you know what, this is an amazing vegetable. And then you could actually even ask for some to take back into your home country. Or so you realize that so many times we miss these opportunities because our tourism is biased towards trying to give you a 5-star experience.
You posted about the cactus. I really want to try the cactus. But you know, this is really the core idea for Rethink Travel. The reason I called it Rethink is really because I want people to think twice before they go somewhere, and I want people to think twice before they take any action. So it's not only about the hotel they book, but it's really how they book, why they want to go somewhere. And I'm Korean, and Asia have the same problem. You know, when people say, oh, you're from Asia, I'm like, no, I'm from Korea. It's one country in Asia, you know, and I feel like Africa has the same problem. Usually travelers, especially we don't really like this term, but it is a term, the luxury travelers, they will just pick a nice lodge, not really care which country it is in. They just want to go because the lodge is nice. There's a really big problem about the hunting tourism, and they don't even realize how many countries and how many different cultures there are in so many different African countries. And this is why I love always listening to you talk, because you have such a passion about Zimbabwe. I think it's really hard to mention Zimbabwe without mentioning the Victoria Falls, and you did mention them. And it's a touristic attraction also. There's too many people just going some kind of a tour around a few countries, and then they just want to hit the Victoria Falls spot and not really care about anything else the country has to offer. So I really want, you know, through this channel, through our Instagram, through this podcast, everything, I really want to educate people on why they should care about, you know, everything you're saying and everything you're doing. I want people to care about the people in the country, because without them, there's no country. And without the animals, there's nothing. And, and you know, I wanted to actually also have your opinion on this issue in Zimbabwe. Is it a big issue? Is there, what can we do, and how can we educate people?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talk of hunting tourism, like one thing that we need to understand is we have to understand that we're in a competition, right? There are those that want to keep the animals, and there are those that want to kill the animals. And then there are those that own the animals, right? So those people that actually own the animals, right, they're stuck in between two things, right? You realize that, even as I mentioned earlier on, right? That most of those communities that are in places where the animals are, they are some of the poorest communities that we have in Africa. They can't afford to pay school fees. They can't afford food. Why? The primary reason why they can't afford food is that whenever they try to plant crops, elephants, baboons, and so many other different animals actually go in there and destroy the crops, right? So then somebody comes and then offers them and say, you know what, we're going to pay so much money for us to be able to hunt an elephant. Then somebody has a lodge that is making millions and then just encourages them with their word of mouth and say, no, you should actually look after the animals and everything, right? But those hunters, they come and they're holding money and they pay, right? What happens to those lodges that are within their local communities? They are of no benefit to them, right? So eventually what that means is that we are just dealing with an issue of people making a business decision and a life-changing decision, right? Why? Because they need to eat. So if hunters are going to bring in money that is going to allow them to eat, one thing that I feel that we really need to do if we are going to actually save the animals, right? Because we cannot just come and then attack and say, hunting is not good, right? As opposed to what? That's one very first question that we need to understand is hunting is good as opposed to what? As opposed to keeping the animals within the local communities and lodges are built within there so that tourists can actually come from thousands of miles and then enjoy the animals, right? Without benefiting the local communities. The local communities will tell you, you know what, we would rather take the hunters' money because it's something that is feeding directly into our pockets, right? So I actually feel the only way that we can actually deal with this issue is to make sure that the local communities derive value from the animals, right? So if they benefit from keeping the animals alive, right? If, let's say, for example, if you are within a rural community that owns an Airbnb that is generating a revenue of $100,000 for them every year, that could be shared within the community, right? They would understand that these tourists are coming to our facility because they want to see the animals, right? Do you think those people will actually kill the animals or allow anybody to hunt the animals? No, they won't do that. Why? Because they are benefiting value, they're deriving value from these animals, right? So
this is such an important point to understand.
Yes. So at the end of the day, what matters is that what value are the local communities actually getting from the animals that are surrounding them, right? So one of the best ways we can actually go against hunting is for us to invest in those local communities. Because once those local communities actually own the land and own the facilities that are actually bringing in tourists, you see, you will then eventually be able to then protect the animals without even lifting a finger or trying to fight with those hunting guys. Why? Because if they try to buy a trophy or to get a right to hunt a buffalo, who is going to stop them? It's the local communities because the animals belong to them, right? So you realize that, yes, here in Africa, I will tell you that animals are very sacred to us, right? We don't kill animals for fun. When people kill animals, they actually kill animals to eat, right? It's never within our communities. It was never a part of us Africans that people would actually go and hunt. You can see there we've got paintings that have lasted centuries showing how sacred animals were for local people. If you look at sun paintings, the koi paintings here in Zimbabwe and Southern Africa, you realize that animals used to be very sacred to us. Even here in Zimbabwe, we have got what we call totems, right? So every tribe sort of identifies itself by a certain animal. So me, I come from a tribe which is called the lion tribe, right? I'm a Shumba. So in my local dialect, Shumba is a lion, right? I'm identified as a lion. I identify as a lion. So for me, a lion is a sacred animal, right? Others identify themselves as a buffalo. We've got the Nyati tribe, right? Here, you can find, of course, yes, people actually eat buffalo, right? But when someone is coming from the buffalo tribe, they can't eat the buffalo. Why? Because it's a sacred animal to them, right? So we even have people that have got totems of fish. They can't eat fish, right? So you realize that animals for us are sacred, right? We would never kill animals for fun, right? And even our diets, most of our diets were actually vegan diets. If you look at our 8 centuries ago, like most of us would, like here in Africa, it was more like a plant diet-based diet that we had, right? You realize that people didn't even keep animals to within their homesteads. They would hunt animals maybe once in a while, but most of the diet was actually plant-based, right? So there's nothing that can stop us from going there. But the only way we can actually go there is to make sure that local communities actually benefit from those animals, right? So me, I actually feel that animals are sacred, right? Nobody's got a right to kill an animal for fun, right? To come all the way from America into Zimbabwe to actually kill an animal, right? But I would understand also those people that actually allow for hunting to happen, right? Because there is a certain immediate benefit that is actually there for the communities to actually benefit, right? So you realize that it's a catch-22 situation. But the only way that we can actually solve it is by having movements that are started by you. You started Rethink Travel. You're actually asking people, you know what, before you travel, think about where you're going, right? Think about the communities that you'll be going, right? So that when you actually visit them, you become a part of their tourism economy. Not just come and stay at a five-star hotel, spend the night, and then you go back to your country. That you would want people, when they actually visit, they experience the local community. So I actually feel that's the only way we can actually win the argument with the hunters, right? If we then make sure that there's more value for the local communities in the animals being alive than them being dead.
Yes, this is how we can create this community of conscious travelers. This is really what we're aiming for, especially now that travel is sort of coming back in some countries in the world. I will do everything I can to inspire people not to go back into this mass tourism, stay in a hotel, do nothing else than eating, Western food in their hotel on the other side of the world. And I actually really urge everyone listening to this to go to your Instagram, actually, Phinias, and I will have the name of your Instagram in the show notes, because every single one of your video is really showing a different aspect of Zimbabwe, and every time I look at your videos, I just want to be there with you. I can almost smell my phone, because you go to all these, you educate people on agriculture, on, I also saw your project with bricks and all these different things, and it also makes me wonder, what is a typical day in the life of Phinias?
I am actually an entrepreneur, but right now, what one thing that I'm trying to put a lot of effort on is to establish a vegetable market within Victoria Falls. So what we wanted to do was to open a shop that can actually sell produce to hotels and lodges. So our primary source for the vegetables would be from the rural communities that's around Victoria Falls. But of course, yes, one of the biggest challenges is that they don't have an opportunity for them to sort of do mass agriculture, like sort of grow their crops maybe in quantities that would then help to sustain like the hotels, right? So, but one of the things that we did was that we said, you know what we can do is we can then come up with a vegetable market shop, right? Then from there, we then start to finance the farmers to be able to grow those crops, so that now when they do their vegetables, we are then able now to sell them within our market, right? But for now, for us to get the business concept going, we will be sourcing from other places, maybe that are several kilometers away. But the good thing is that those agricultural commodities that would also be sourcing in the meantime are also mostly planted by women in rural communities across the country. So when we'll be sourcing these products, eventually we then also then develop the communities within that surround Victoria Falls, help them maybe with what we then wanted to do was to push for organic farming. that they grow vegetables organically and other crops organically, then eventually have a variety of those vegetables within our shops and then sell to the market, right? Because one of the biggest challenges that they've always traditionally had is the lack of access to the market, right? So a lot of these entrepreneurs, when they open up their shops, right, what do? They want to source the vegetables where they are cheapest. They don't care from where, right? So they would rather buy a vegetable that is coming 1,000 kilometers away just because it's a bit cheaper than what the locals can actually produce. But we wanted to create a concept where we are saying the value of a commodity is not determined by the price, but it's actually determined by how much it helps the local communities as well, right? So, but for us to be able to solve that, we cannot go to a third-party shop and say, you know what, we encourage you to buy from local communities and everything. They tell you, yeah, no, but that's not part of our business model, right? But us having the resources to be able to open up the shop and to stock up the shop, right? We then said, you know what, we could actually move our money from maybe some of the businesses that we're doing and really push it into that business. I feel like it makes me happier because I've never been happier in my life starting any business than this one. Why? Because, you know, it means a lot for women. It means a lot for rural communities, and it actually allows us to connect. And guess what? Within that concept, there's a lot of opportunity to actually make money, right? It doesn't mean that when we're doing this, we have to actually do it for free, right? But we can make our money, and the local communities also make their money, and our rural women actually make their money as well, right? That at the end of the day, it eventually becomes good for all of us. Right, so yeah, that's how my day is actually composed of, and I'm a father of two. Yeah, you know, like being a father, it's quite a demanding job. Like, I mean, you know, sometimes when I go to those rural communities, I mean, I'm detached a bit from the kids, but you know what, it's always amazing. Like when I get to reconnect with them. But one of the things, like even ways we spoke earlier on, like our children are the future. So here in Africa, it's automatic. If I die, it's my children that are going to inherit my fortune, be it $100 or $1,000,000, whichever I have. But it's my children that are going to inherit that. But now, so our future is actually going to be within our children, because when our children now, imagine when my children become a part of this business cycle, they actually understand the business and they know it, and it then means that we actually have a better future because we now have children that understand that it's not profit before people, but it's people before profit, right? So I think it's a movement that we are starting it. I think it's going to take us 20, 30 years for us to be able maybe to do sizable impact. But those baby steps that we take between me and you, right, they would actually sort of bear fruit. In 30 years, when we actually retire and we are full-time travelers now, we'll be just sitting back and smiling and say, you know what, we're actually a part of this movement, just as like those guys who became part of the fast foods movement, you know, like it was so many years ago where they entered the market and now they're looking and sitting back and saying, now, you know what, we were part of this movement, but now our movement is way much different. It's going to be very responsible to the earth and it's going to transform the earth for future generations to come. So it will be also great for us to also sit down and look back in years to come and really enjoy the fruits of our works. Huh?
Absolutely. And you know, something I always say also, you know, the reason why we fight every day is because if we don't take care of this planet and people, there will not be too many places to see anymore. Not the way we did. This is also why we're so passionate about this work we're doing. And I just feel like there's a lot of hope in this upcoming generation. There's lots of discussions. I see so many people stepping up in all parts of the world. This is a great thing. And I was just wondering, do you feel like the tourism board of Zimbabwe is really going into the same direction? Do they really listen to what you're saying? Do you work with lodges to change their supply chain and really integrate this rural community into their economy? And do you see things changing?
Yeah, you know, like first and foremost, the tourism boards all across Africa, they are very much strained of resources, right? You know, like for example, here in Zimbabwe, about almost close to 60% of the country is protected area, right? That is to be managed by Zimpax, right, and Forestry Commission, right. But for these guys to be able to protect these lands, there is a very huge demand in terms of their budget, because they have to protect the animals against poachers and protect the local communities from the animals, and so you realize that the tourism authorities are always overwhelmed, especially, right? So for us now to go on to them, talk to them, right, it takes us now then going to their table and say, you know what, we want to ease your pressure a bit, right? So we are going to come in and look for ways of empowering local communities, that they also become a lot of beneficiaries from tourism revenue, right? So you realize that these people are very receptive to new ideas, right? So we actually work very close hand in hand with Zimpax. They deal with the local communities. So I think, okay, pretty much. Let me just give you a brief background so that you would understand the context, right? So in so many different countries, like be it Zimbabwe, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, right? You realize that there is a body that is aligned to the government that looks after the animals in the parks, right? So what happens when animals are in the parks? You've got poachers that actually come and kill the animals. You've got poachers that also come and cut down trees, right, and destroy the environment, and maybe do illegal mining, so many things like that, right? So there are authorities that are meant to stop those activities and protect the land, right? So in Zimbabwe, that is called Zimpax, right? So those guys are already overwhelmed and stretched of resources, right? So you realize that for them now to then start to focus on empowering local communities, it's going to be very difficult for them. But they would be very much happy if then third parties now would then come inside. So they would then come into the picture, and then also become working side by side with them and saying, you know what, we're also going to get into the local communities and educate those people so that they don't kill the animals. We want them to extract value from the animals, because the biggest challenge that we have with our animals here is poaching. And those poachers, when they want to poach animals, they don't just come from nowhere, right? They will just get into the local communities and change one or two people within those local communities and use them to be part of their syndicates, right? Why? Because these people are bringing in dollar, right? And most of these communities, they are very poor communities, right? So they will take the money from the devil. But imagine if me and you, let's say we've got a Airbnb that is within those rural communities, and the people are hosting tourists and they are very happy with the revenue that they are getting, right? What will happen if a poacher ever tries to turn one of them? The poacher will be apprehended, right? Why? Because the community are protecting the animals because they actually derive value from that, right? As opposed, right now, we are having wars against poachers where you have soldiers that are literally holding guns and they are having these fights with the poachers. A lot of poachers are killed, and unfortunately, a lot of wildlife rangers are also killed, right? So the best way we can actually win that war against poaching is through the local communities, right? So the Zimpax and all those parks, like animal protection organizations throughout Africa, they actually need people like me and you to actually go to them and also engage them and work with them side by side, right? And fortunately, here in Zimbabwe, those guys are amazing. They love animals. They love to protect the environment, right? So they always listen, and they're always ready to listen. And whenever we lend a hand to them, they always very much welcome our input, right? And one of the things that we've been doing with them also is to use sports as a way of getting people to visit the national parks so that the parks actually generate a bit of revenue. So what we've been doing is we've been hosting marathons within national parks, right? So that people can actually get to visit those parks, and then also the parks get a bit of revenue, and then it also helps us with our relationship, right? So yeah, I actually feel like We have started the relationship, but I only think that we can actually be able to achieve more if then me and you actually work together in making sure that local communities also become beneficiaries of the tourism value chain. And when I'm saying this, I'm not saying let's get rid of those lodges that are already in existence, those 7-star lodges. No, we actually need them on our side, right? This is how we need them on our side, right? They are the ones that actually draw the tourists within those areas. And those other communities would then feed off from them, get $1 or $2 from those tourists that would have come from them, not as donations, but as direct benefit from doing direct business with either the lodges or the travelers, right? So those 5-star lodges, those 7-star lodges that we actually have, we love those people, right? In as much as some of their practices need to be scrutinized, right? But we're all taking baby steps. So if we get them on our side and we really educate them and say, you know what, if you take care of the local communities in a better way, it would actually be better for you and it would actually reward you more, right? So I think, but also I think for us now to also enforce a behavioral change within them, right? We also need to have you demanding accountability. For example, if you go to a lodge that is within Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe, you tell them we've got a potential of bringing you 200 tourists every year, on condition that you prove to us that at least 30% of your supplies actually come from local communities. Because you are holding the carrot.
It's really about having a conversation with the hotels. And this is why, even if we have less lodges at the beginning working with us, we want to inspire the others and just tell them, okay, we can do this together. We can work together. You can drive a better group of travelers coming to your lodge. This is really what we're hoping to do. So tell me your closing remarks.
So my closing remarks, now I'll steal it from you. Rethink before you travel, right? So to the tourist, right, when you visit a country, right, be it anywhere in the world, be it Africa or me an African going to America, right, whenever you travel to a place, the most wonderful thing about those places are the people, right? So whenever you visit a destination, make sure that you connect with the people, not with the hotel, not with animals, but connect with the people. So I feel like when people are traveling, there's this plastic travel that is plastic as in fake. I don't know if it's the right terminology, but where we take you to Africa, then when you come to Africa, we go and we show you where the poor people live, and then we show you the animals, and then you've experienced Africa. Rethink that. Those people are not poor. Those people are the happiest people that you would ever see, right? We call them poor because they are not wearing Nike Jordans or they're not watching cable TV, right? But those people, they eat the most amazing food. Those people, they've got vast tracts of land and they breathe the most amazing air, right? They've never had a day of pollution within their lives, right? So when you actually, someone is telling you, no, we are going to visit these communities, they are poor communities and everything, right? Rethink that. Those people are not poor. Those people are just different from you. They've got different values, right? Some of them, they actually have hundreds of cattle, but they would rather walk without shoes, right? So when they're walking without shoes, it doesn't mean that they're poor. No, they just choose. That's their way of life, right? So for us, whenever we look at those people, we are looking at them with an eye of pity. No, come be a part of them, right? Be a part of those communities, work with those communities, enjoy those communities, go and eat their food, the food that they're having, right? It's just amazing food that keeps them healthy. They've got, most of them have got the healthiest skin and they've got the healthiest lifestyles and they live the longest and everything. So when you come and you don't interact with those people, you're missing out on a lot of things. So when you actually travel, to the travelers, I just encourage them, whenever you travel, make sure that you get an opportunity to have a genuine connection with the local people, right? And to the hotels and the lodges that are there, they actually do a lot for local communities. It's not like we're complaining that are not meaningful, whatever they do. No, it's just that the world has changed. We just need to rethink everything, right? It's no longer profit before people, but it's people before profit now. So those lodges, we just encourage them to make sure that when they talk of a 5-star experience, it's not a 5-star experience of sleeping in a bed that has got Louis Vuitton sheets, or watching cable TV, or maybe getting a massage spa within the hotel or something like that. No, it has to go beyond that. It has to be a genuine connection with the people, with the environment, with the animals and everything around. Yeah, so those are just my closing remarks. And one of the things that I just love so many of you in the Northern Hemisphere, how much you actually think about the global South and everything, right? You guys, like, you really inspire us. And thanks to platforms like Clubhouse, they allowed us to actually connect with you and realize that, you know what, you actually have the same concern that we have for ourselves here, right? And I actually believe that this is a partnership that is going to benefit both people in the Northern Hemisphere and also people in the Southern Hemisphere. So this is one of the most wonderful opportunities that we have. These conversations that we're having that connect people, these are the true conversations that are actually going to actually transform the world, right? It's not about what comes out of COP26. Yes, they can decide whatever they decide, but no one can actually stop this movement that we actually have. And it's a movement that is actually going to transform the earth for our kids and for our future generations to come. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Phinias.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. Find us on Instagram, re.think.travel, to stay up to date with our news. We will be back very soon with a new episode, so don't forget to subscribe. Have a great day.